Hi, welcome back. Okay, we're gonna do still talking about vertebrates, marine vertebrates, and so far, if we look back at our table here, we've talked about we're talking about different phylums. So we're all in the kingdom Animalia, and we're all in the phylum, actually, sorry, Vertebrata or Chordata. And now we're going to jump down into the two types that we're going to talk about today, two different classes of vertebrates, chordates, that are out there. All right. So the first class we're going to talk about is Agnatha, or the jawless fish. And the agnathans consist of two basic types, hagfish and lampreys, and characteristics of those. So what makes an agnathan, right? They share all the traits that vertebrates have. So muscles and blocks, respiration through gills, sensory organs, of course, some type of vertebral column, or in this case, a notochord. But things that separate them out, that make them unique into their own group, are actually that they lack paired fins. So they don't have like pectoral fins up here, paired front fins that they can use to move by. In other groups, such as amphibians, reptiles, birds, and mammals, those are our arms, right? But these guys, they don't have that. They just have fins on their anterior, right, and then on their posterior end. And what's called a caudal fin is actually a tail fin in fish. Okay. So they lack paired fins, and they also lack any type of biting jaw. They don't have scelature in the head. They are even proto-cartilage in some ways. The notochord is sort of cartilaginous that runs down their back, but they don't have jaws at all. They have this sort of raspy mouth. Oh, here's a picture of the notochord there. And then the nerves run down it. So you got that, that clustered brain, right, that is unique to vertebrates. And then they have nerves that connect that brain all the way down to the rest of their body, into their different muscle groups and organs. And in this case, instead of having a vertebral column, true vertebral column, they have what's called a notochord. So it is a cartilaginous, flexible cord that the nerves are kind of zip tied to with other little pieces of cartilage. So again, it's not encased inside a nice vertebra. It's here. This is my daughter's little. This is for a hot glue gun. So the notochord is sort of flexible like this, and the nerves kind of run along the top of it, and then they're kind of zip tied in along it to kind of gives them some protection, but it's not a lot. Not as good as a true vertebral column. Okay, notochords are found in all vertebrate embryos. So we later evolve, vertebrate backbones that cover this whole thing. But to start, we all have this, and then vertebrae grow around it later in our development. Kind of cool. The oldest fossils for these guys, the agnathans, go back 540 million years. So we find these really far back in the fossil record, meaning they've been around a long, long time, longer than any other vertebrates. These date back in the fossil record. That's also how we know they're kind of proto-us. Okay, here's just some cool looking pictures of them. So you can see that they have these little projections, sort of protein-like projections, like little fingernails or horns that grow out of their face. They use to rasp into and onto things, and then they tend to be somewhat parasitic. Here they are attached to salmon. Our Pacific lamprey, this is what they do. They will attach to larger things and suck and eat their blood, kind of like leeches. Hagfish are even grosser. Hagfish tend to congregate at the bottom of the ocean and in the deepest parts of the oceans, and they feed on dead and decaying carcasses of big things like whales and sharks and sea lions and other things, even fish probably, but they can get in huge groups, and they're incredibly slimy. Look up on your own. Hagfish. Watch a video on them. They are disgusting and cool. Okay. The next group of vertebrates that we are going to look at is in a different class. So we had class Agnatha. That's the oldest and most primitive group of vertebrates or chordates. The next class is chondrichthyes. And chondrichthyes is a big class. It consists of sharks, rays, skates, and these fish called chimeras. Here's a picture of a chimera right up in here. God, they're just really cool looking. We see them at the aquarium. They have them here as well. We have them off our shores as well. Okay. So what is it that makes a chondrichthyes versus an agnathan or a bony fish or a bird? Well, chondrichthyes, they do have paired fins, and they do have biting jaws with teeth. So this is the first time we see this in the animal world, paired fins and teeth embedded in biting jaws. But actually, there's guys' teeth are embedded in their gums, not in their jaws. Anyway, the mouths are located ventrally, meaning look at this picture of the shark down here. The mouths are located on the bottom side. On the bottom side, most things in the ocean are benthic. Most things exist on the bottom of the ocean and are fastened to it. If you think about 80% of all animals being some type of insect or crustacean, think about all the creepy crawly things on the bottom of the sea. Think about the clams. Think about worms, anemones, starfish, right? All the food is attached to something at the bottom. So most life is in shallow seas. So their mouth is located on the bottom to get at those things. Now, there are some sharks, like great white sharks, whose mouths are located more towards the end of their face, and they're going to be hunting in the mid-ocean stream. But again, most things are not up in the water column. They're down in the bottom, somewhat attached to rocks or in association with kelp forests. So these guys, sharks, evolved to cruise along and munch on those things that are attached to the bottom. Okay, they have visible gill slits. When we get into bony fish later, fish like salmon and stuff, they have an operculum. It's a plate, mirror inside there, that covers their gills and then opens up to let water in, but then slaps back to cover their gills because the gills are sensitive and full of blood and parasites and other things get on them. Sharks are exposed. Sharks and rays are exposed. You can see the gill slits down here on a stingray. But they have this thing called a spiracle, and a spiracle is the hole right behind the eye, right in here, that takes in water, and then the water passes through the gills, and then it shoots out the gills. The reason they don't take in water through their mouth is if they're down in the bottom feeding, they're going to be sucking up all kinds of mud from the bottom, and that's going to be clogging up and getting into their gills. Better to take in water from the freshness above you. And especially if you're a stingray, their mouths are all the way in the bottom, and they're down there feeding in mud, digging. They can't breathe through their mouth or take in water through their mouth. They would just suck in a mouthful of mud and clog their gills. So on the backside, on the top, they have these spiracles. Again, usually located right behind the eye, the spiracles, and people often see them as breathing, and it looks kind of weird, especially if you've seen a stingray. It's like, whoa, what are they doing? They're cartilaginous fish, skeletons of only cartilage, and there's 900 species worldwide. Okay, I'm going to try to move a little faster here. And sharks take many, many, many forms. Again, 900 species in this group. When we think of sharks, we tend to go back to this image here, these big great whites. But so few sharks are actually like that, and so few in this group. Chondrichthyes, cartilaginous fish, are really scary things. Most of them are just endlessly fascinating. The sawfish down here has these little cartilaginous projections that stick off, and it actually uses it like a rake to dig up mollusks and things like that from the soft sediments of the ocean, and then it gobbles them up in its mouth. Cool. Okay. So we're going to talk about two orders now. We're going to first talk about rays and skates, and then we're going to jump into sharks. So the order of rays. Again, orders are below classes. So the class right here is chondrichthyes, right? And then we have order below that. Whoa. We have order below that, and then below that we have family and finally genus and species. Okay, the order for this one is Batoidae. Bats, right? Rays and skates. Characteristics of this order are that they have huge pectoral fins. These are massively enlarged pectoral fins, and the organisms are kind of compressed, dorsiventrally compressed, we would say. So they're squished down so that they expand out sideways. So laterally compressed organisms are kind of like what's the one with the teeth? Not a humpback. Yeah, sperm whales. But anyway, that's an aside. These guys are compressed down, big pectoral fins, and they are benthic bottom feeders. So they feed in soft mud and sediment. Out past the waves and breakers where there's sand and gravel, where the ocean kind of mellows out a little bit, and you just get the swell. If you were to dive down to the bottom there, that bottom is just soft, fine, really cloudy, sediments and things like that. So they cruise down there, and they use those pectoral fins to kind of kick up big clouds of sediment and then bring up things like mollusks and worms and shrimp, and then they chew and eat on those. Kind of cool. So they feed on crustaceans and mollusks. If you look at their mouth here, it's like two big hard plates that are kind of like sandpapery, so they can grab a clam and hang on to it, and then they can kind of squeeze it like, and then clams. Okay. Stingrays. What separates rays from skates? So stingrays actually have spines on there, and you can see one right in here. Right? Okay, so that's a ray. Skates, on the other hand, don't have any spines, interestingly enough. So they can't really sting you. I think these are spines, or maybe those are the fins on this one. This is the skate. But for stingrays, they actually have the little spines, and those spines hurt. Here's a picture of one showing up. It's made of cartilage. It's almost bony in itself, and it's got these little serrations along the edge. It'll pop into you, and they're full of poison. They can hurt real bad. Skates, different from stingrays. They're more temperate, so that's what we have. We don't actually have stingrays here that I'm aware of. Skates, we usually don't see skates. Sometimes if you're deep sea or bottom fishing for things like flounder or halibut, you can catch one. Pretty big. Our Raha binoculata is the largest one, and you can see a person sitting next to one here, probably caught off a research boat, because this does not look like a fisherman. That looks like a nerd. So more temperate waters. Yeah, and they do not have spines. We have 3 different species in the Pacific Northwest of ray. Let's move on. Let's get into Salaci. Okay, order Salaci, sharks. So sharks are in a different order, but they're in the same class, chondrichthyes, cartilaginous fish from rays. And they're in their own group, Salaci. And sharks date back 420 million years. So if you remember looking at Agnethans, those are back 500, 40, 60, something like that, million years. Sharks are more recent, 420 million years being recent. But what am I doing here? Let's just keep going. Okay. There's over 500 species in just this group, so I think 900 species I said in chondrichthyes, so 400 would be rays and skates or chimeras, and then the other 500, big chunk of these, are sharks. And the smallest is the dwarf lanternfish. I have a picture of it right here. That is an adult-sized shark you're looking at. And most people, when they think sharks, they're like, ah, like this person's swimming and screaming because they're thinking great whites. But again, they vary so much in size and shape and feeding that not all of them, in fact, most of them are not scary. The largest in the world is the whale shark, 46 feet. Here's a picture of a whale shark right here as well. And I embedded some hyperlinks in there so you can look further if you want to in the slideshow. Shark skin is covered in these dermal denticles. And dermal denticles are like little tiny teeth. In fact, dermal means skin. Denticule refers to teeth. And under a microscope, this is what they look like. You can blow these suckers up. And each shark species has its own unique dermal denticule sort of pattern here. So you can see these. So you can identify these under a microscope by species, which is cool too. You can look back on the fossil record and see these. Shark skin has been used for a lot of different things because of that. Okay. With sharks, their teeth are embedded in their gums. They are not fixed to a jaw. And they replace these throughout their lifetime, so they're constantly growing new teeth. Many sharks are apex predators, the great white, tiger, blue, mako, and the hammerhead. But again, many in the majority are benthic bottom feeders. And sharks lack a gas-filled swim bladder for buoyancy, so they rely on a large liver filled with oil to help them float. And so shark liver oil is a commodity that's out there. People sell it as some kind of superfood nature thing. It's just a specific type of oil. There's nothing special or magic about it. The only thing special about it is that large, majestic animals are murdered for your health food store section. Isn't that great? So I encourage people not to support those types of things. If you see those out there, it's not going to help you live longer, and it'll just help a shark live a lot less longer. I have to post one more video now. Can you believe it? Just to finish up this slideshow, because I'm talking too much. Good stuff. More to come.